What happens when the galaxy's most advanced civilizations discover that their idea of weak doesn't match humanity's definition of average? Marcus Chen thought his biggest challenge would be surviving alien cafeteria food and understanding quantum physics in 3 different languages. He was wrong. Dead wrong. When the Galactic Educational Exchange Program selected Earth's first interstellar student, they expected to get a curious but fragile specimen from a backwater planet. What they got instead was a human who could bench press their security robots, outrun their fastest athletes, and solve military tactical problems that had stumped their greatest strategists for centuries. But Marcus's real test wasn't in the classroom. It was on the battlefield, where humanity's greatest strength isn't their physical prowess or their stubborn refusal to quit. It's something far more dangerous to their enemies and far more valuable to their allies: the ability to turn any situation, no matter how hopeless, into a chance for victory. The galaxy is about to learn why humans don't just survive. They thrive. And they never, ever fight alone. Welcome to the universe's newest nightmare, a motivated human with something to prove. Marcus Chen had always been average. Average grades, average height, average everything. So when the Galactic Educational Exchange Program selected him as Earth's first interstellar student, he figured it was either a mistake or humanity had set the bar really, really low. The transport ship Cosmic Harmony stretched out like a floating city, its bioluminescent walls pulsing with soft blue light. Marcus pressed his face against the observation window, watching Earth shrink to a pale blue dot. 3 months ago, he'd been struggling through his engineering degree at Berkeley. Now he was heading to Kepler Station, the galaxy's most prestigious educational facility, home to the brightest minds from 47 different species. First time in space, human? The voice belonged to ZYX Tal, a Vorthan who looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a philosophy professor. His compound eyes studied Marcus with what might have been curiosity or hunger. With aliens, it was hard to tell. Yeah. Pretty amazing. Marcus gestured at the vast expanse of stars. How about you? ZYX Tal made a sound like rustling leaves. I have made this journey 17 times. Space becomes ordinary when you possess superior intellect. He tilted his triangular head. Your species, you are from that small planet, yes? The one with the excessive water? Earth. That's us. Fascinating. Your admission scores were quite low by galactic standards. I assume you are here as part of some diversity initiative? Marcus felt his cheeks burn, but before he could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Veltar's gravelly voice filled the corridor. All passengers prepare for docking procedures. Welcome to Kepler Station, jewel of the Andromeda Educational Collective. Through the viewport, the station emerged from behind a gas giant's rings. It was breathtaking, a massive crystalline structure that seemed to grow like coral, with transport ships flowing in and out like luminous fish. Spires twisted upward for kilometers, each one housing different academic departments. At the center, a sphere of pure energy contained the quantum computers that processed the collective knowledge of dozens of civilizations. The docking procedure took 2 hours. Marcus used the time to review his welcome packet, trying to memorize the names of alien species he'd never heard of and customs that made no sense. Apparently, looking directly at a Zephyrian was considered a marriage proposal, while the crystalline collective communicated primarily through mathematical equations. When the airlock finally opened, Marcus stepped into chaos. The arrival bay buzzed with hundreds of beings in every conceivable shape and size. Tall, ethereal selenites glided past on gossamer wings. Massive Goliath-class beings lumbered along designated heavyweight corridors. Small, quick skitterers darted between everyone's legs, chittering in high-pitched voices. Marcus Chen, designation, Human 001? A melodious voice caught his attention. He turned to see a being that looked like living starlight shaped into a vaguely humanoid form. I am Lumina, your academic advisor. Welcome to Kepler Station. Thank you. This place is incredible. Indeed. You will find our facilities accommodate beings from across the spectrum of galactic evolution. Lumina gestured with an arm that sparkled like a constellation. Your dormitory assignment is in Sector 7, along with other physically durable species. We have taken the liberty of adjusting the gravity to what your species considers normal. They walked through corridors that seemed to bend space itself. Marcus's head spun trying to understand the architecture. Students floated, crawled, and phase-shifted past them. Some looked like they were made of pure mathematics. Others appeared to be sentient gas clouds. Your schedule, Lumina continued, producing a datapad from thin air, includes advanced theoretical physics with Professor Quindar, interspecies communication with Dr. Helix, and applied engineering with the Machinist Collective. You will also be required to participate in physical fitness assessments. Physical fitness? Standard requirement. Each species must maintain optimal health parameters. Do not worry, the assessments are calibrated for your species' limitations. They arrived at Marcus's dormitory, a modest room with a bed that looked like it could accommodate a small aircraft carrier, a desk made from some kind of living wood, and a viewport showing the swirling colors of the nebula beyond. Mealtimes are flexible, Lumina explained. The nutritional dispensers are programmed with your species' dietary requirements. Classes begin tomorrow at local cycle 0800. Any questions? Marcus had about 1,000, but he settled for, I think I'm good. Excellent. Sleep well, Marcus-chan. Tomorrow you begin your education in the greater universe. The next morning, Marcus made his way to his first class, Advanced Theoretical Physics. The lecture hall was enormous, with seating areas adapted for beings of vastly different sizes and atmospheric requirements. Some students sat in pools of liquid methane. Others hung from the ceiling in gravity-defying harnesses. A few seemed to exist as pure energy patterns hovering near specialized receptors. Professor Quindar was a cerebrite, basically a brain the size of a small car floating in a transparent tank filled with glowing fluid. When he spoke, his words appeared as holographic text in dozens of languages simultaneously. Today we discuss the fundamental constants of our universe, Quindar began. As you all know, the speed of light in vacuum, the gravitational constant, and Planck's constant form the basic framework of reality itself. Marcus frantically took notes, trying to keep up with concepts that made his head hurt. Around him, other students absorbed the information with ease. A Vorthan student like ZYX Tal was simultaneously solving 3 different equation sets while carrying on a side conversation about quantum entanglement theory. Now then, Quindar continued, let us consider a practical problem. You are commanding a fleet of ships attempting to traverse a gravitational anomaly that is warping spacetime around a neutron star. The anomaly is causing time dilation effects that vary across a 3-dimensional matrix. How do you calculate the optimal trajectory to minimize relativistic effects while maintaining fleet cohesion? Hands, tentacles, and other appendages shot up around the room. Marcus stared at the problem, his mind racing. The mathematics involved were staggering: multiple differential equations, relativistic mechanics, and something called quantum gravitational flux compensation that he was pretty sure they'd just invented. But, as he looked at the problem, something clicked. It wasn't really about the math. It was about patterns. About finding the path of least resistance through a complex system. He raised his hand. Professor Quindar's massive brain pulsed with surprise. Yes, student Chen? What if you don't fight the anomaly? What if you use it? The lecture hall fell silent. Marcus felt hundreds of eyes, sensors, and other sensory organs focus on him. Explain, Quindar said. Marcus stood up, his heart pounding. The time dilation isn't random, right? It's following the gravitational gradient. So instead of trying to minimize the effects, you could choreograph them. Send ships into different dilation zones in a specific sequence, so they all arrive at the same relative time despite experiencing different time flows. The silence stretched on. Marcus began to wonder if he'd said something incredibly stupid. Then, Professor Quindar's brain began to glow brighter. Fascinating. You propose using the anomaly as a tactical multiplier rather than an obstacle to overcome. Exactly. It's like... Marcus searched for an analogy. Like whitewater rafting. You don't fight the current. you use it to go faster. Whitewater rafting? A student near the front, something that looked like a crystal spider, spoke up. What is this thing? It's a human recreational activity, Marcus explained. We take small boats down dangerous rivers for fun. The lecture hall erupted in what Marcus assumed were expressions of shock and confusion in about 40 different languages. For fun? Professor Quindar's text display flickered with what might have been confusion. You deliberately place yourselves in mortal danger as a form of entertainment? Well, yeah. The more dangerous, the more fun it is. The Vorthan student Marcus had met earlier, ZYXTAL, leaned forward. Your species engages in voluntary risk-taking behavior for pleasure? This seems evolutionarily counterproductive. Maybe, Marcus shrugged. But, it teaches you things. How to read water patterns, how to react quickly, how to work as a team when everything's going wrong. Sometimes the best way to handle a dangerous situation is to dive right into it. Professor Quindar was quiet for a long moment, his brain pulsing with what looked like deep thought. Finally, he spoke, Student Chen, your unconventional approach to the neutron star problem is intriguing. I would like you to develop this concept further. Perhaps you could present your full solution to the Advanced Strategic Studies Council. The what now? It is a joint committee of our finest military tacticians and strategic theorists. They have been working on this particular scenario for several galactic standard years. Marcus felt his stomach drop. You want me to present to military experts? I'm just a first-year engineering student. Indeed. Which makes your insight all the more remarkable. Professor Quindar's brain brightened. Class dismissed. Student Chen, please remain behind. As the other students filed out, chattering in dozens of languages about the strange human who suggested using gravitational anomalies as tactical tools, Marcus approached the professor's tank. Professor, I think there might be some misunderstanding. I'm not some kind of genius. I just think differently because I'm human. Precisely the point, Student Chen. In all my centuries of teaching, I have never encountered a being who approached the neutron star scenario from a perspective of embracing danger rather than avoiding it. Your species' apparent comfort with risk may provide insights that more cautious civilizations lack. Marcus stared at the floating brain. You mean other species don't take risks? Not voluntarily. Most galactic civilizations evolved past such behaviors millions of years ago. We optimize for safety, efficiency, and predictable outcomes. The concept of deliberately seeking danger for educational or recreational purposes is alien to us. But, how do you innovate? How do you solve problems you've never faced before? Through careful analysis, computational modeling, and consensus building among multiple expert groups. It is a slow but reliable process. Marcus nodded slowly, beginning to understand something fundamental about his situation. He wasn't here because he was the smartest human on Earth. He was here because humans thought differently from everyone else in the galaxy. They were the species that looked at a dangerous river and thought, let's ride it. They were the ones who saw a problem and asked, what if we try the thing that everyone says won't work? Professor, Marcus said, I think I'm starting to understand why they really sent me here. Oh? And why is that, Student Chen? Marcus grinned. Because sometimes the galaxy needs someone stupid enough to try the impossible. Professor Quindar's brain pulsed with what Marcus was learning to recognize as amusement. Perhaps stupid is not the correct term. Audacious might be more accurate. But, yes, I believe you may be correct. As Marcus walked back to his dormitory, he felt something he hadn't experienced since arriving at the station, confidence. Maybe he wasn't the smartest being here. Maybe he didn't have the best grades or the most advanced technology. But, he was human, and, apparently, that meant something in a galaxy full of beings who had forgotten how to take chances. His communication pad chimed with a message from Lumina, Academic Council requests meeting tomorrow, 0900 local time. Congratulations on your first day, Student Chen. Marcus smiled as he looked out at the stars beyond his viewport. His first day, and he'd already been invited to present to military strategists. Not bad for an average human from a backwater planet. But, as he settled in for the night, Marcus had no idea that his suggestion about the neutron star problem was about to change everything. Not just for him, but for the entire galaxy. Because somewhere in the vast expanse of space, ancient enemies were stirring, and they were about to discover that the galaxy's newest students came from a species that didn't just study war. They celebrated it. The Advanced Strategic Studies Council met in a chamber that defied physics. The room seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with holographic displays showing star maps, fleet movements, and tactical scenarios floating in impossible geometric arrangements. Marcus felt dizzy just looking around. "Student Chen," Admiral Koratha's voice boomed through the chamber. The Titani's military commander stood 3 meters tall, his exoskeleton gleaming with ceremonial battle honors from conflicts spanning several centuries. "Professor Quindar tells us you have an unconventional solution to the Epsilon Eridani scenario." Marcus swallowed hard. Around the chamber, beings representing the galaxy's finest military minds waited for him to speak. He recognized a few species from his studies: the crystalline architects who plan campaigns across geological timescales, the ethereal phantoms whose ability to phase through matter made them legendary infiltrators, and the machine-like calculators who could process battlefield variables at quantum speeds. "Yes, sir. Admiral. Your Excellency?" Marcus stumbled over the proper form of address. "I think the problem is that everyone's approaching it like an obstacle to overcome instead of a tool to use." The holographic display activated, showing the Epsilon Eridani system. A neutron star sat at the center, its immense gravitational field warping spacetime around it in complex patterns. Scattered throughout the system were the wrecks of ships from various expeditions that had tried and failed to navigate the gravitational maze. "For 300 galactic standard years," Admiral Korath continued, "military fleets have attempted to traverse this system. The time dilation effects make coordinated movement impossible. Ships entering the same anomaly at the same time emerge minutes, hours, or even days apart. No formation can maintain cohesion." "But what if you don't want to maintain cohesion?" Marcus stepped closer to the display, his hands moving instinctively as he began to manipulate the holographic controls. "What if you want to scatter your fleet deliberately?" The council members exchanged glances, or whatever passed for glances among beings with compound eyes, sensory clusters, and electromagnetic perception arrays. General Vexhai, a phantom whose translucent form shimmered with barely contained energy, spoke first. "Explain your reasoning, human. In what scenario would deliberate fleet dispersion be tactically advantageous?" Marcus took a deep breath and began manipulating the display. "Imagine you're attacking a heavily defended position. The enemy knows you're coming, they've prepared defenses, set up crossfire patterns, maybe even mined the approach routes. Standard tactics say you coordinate your attack, hit them with overwhelming force at their weakest point." "Correct," Admiral Korath nodded. "This is fundamental military doctrine across all known civilizations. But what if instead of hitting them once with everything you have, you hit them 50 times with small forces, each arriving at a different moment, from different angles, forcing them to constantly readjust their defenses?" Marcus began highlighting different gravitational zones within the neutron star's influence. "You send ships into specific time dilation fields. Ship Group Alpha enters this zone and experiences moderate time compression. They arrive at the target first, maybe 20 minutes before the others. They create chaos, draw defensive fire, force the enemy to commit resources." The display showed virtual ships following Marcus's proposed routes, their timing staggered by the gravitational effects. Group Beta enters this zone with severe time dilation. They arrive 2 hours later, just when the enemy thinks the attack is over and they're starting to regroup. Group Gamma comes in from the opposite side, having used this gravitational slingshot to build up speed while experiencing time acceleration. The tactical display began to show a complex dance of forces, each group hitting the target at precisely the moment when their impact would be most devastating. By the time the main assault force arrives, Marcus continued, the enemy has been dealing with continuous, unpredictable attacks for hours. Their commanders are exhausted, their defensive patterns are broken, and they have no idea where the next strike is coming from. The chamber fell silent. Marcus watched the faces around him, those that had faces, for any sign of reaction. Finally, Calculator Prime Designation 7742 spoke, its voice a harmonious blend of electronic tones. The human presents an intriguing paradigm. Our analysis has always focused on negating the temporal effects. We never considered weaponizing them. It's more than that, added General Vexhai. This approach turns one of the galaxy's most notorious navigation hazards into a tactical multiplier. The same gravitational effects that destroy coordination can create choreographed chaos. Admiral Koratha's massive form leaned forward, his armored plates grinding against each other. Student Chen, are you aware that the Epsilon Eridani system guards the approach to the hegemony's primary shipyards? Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. The hegemony? As in, the species that's been threatening to declare war on the Galactic Collective for the past 50 years? The same. They have used Epsilon Eridani's natural defenses to make their shipyards virtually impregnable. No fleet has successfully navigated those gravitational fields in sufficient numbers to pose a threat. Professor Quindar's holographic image flickered into the chamber. If I may, Admiral, Student Chen's approach suggests that the hegemony may have made the same assumption as the rest of us, that the neutron star represents an obstacle to overcome rather than a weapon to employ. Indeed. Admiral Korath stood to his full height, towering over even the room's elevated ceiling. Student Chen, how would you like to test your theory? Test it? You mean like, with actual ships? The Collective Council has authorized a reconnaissance mission to Epsilon Eridani. Recent intelligence suggests the hegemony is massing a war fleet at their shipyards. We need to know their capabilities and intentions. Marcus felt the chamber spinning around him. Sir, I'm just a student. I don't know anything about actual military operations. Perhaps not, General Vexhai interjected, but you understand something that our combined centuries of military experience failed to grasp. You think like your species thinks, in terms of controlled chaos rather than ordered precision. Calculator Prime 7742 added its analysis, military effectiveness often correlates with cognitive diversity. The human perspective introduces variables that our strategic models have never accounted for. What exactly are you asking me to do? Marcus asked. Admiral Korath activated another holographic display, showing a sleek reconnaissance vessel. The Shadowmere is our finest stealth ship, equipped with advanced sensor arrays and quantum communication systems. Captain Zara Voss commands a crew of specialists in deep space reconnaissance. The display zoomed to show the ship's crew. Marcus saw beings from a dozen different species, each representing expertise in different aspects of military intelligence gathering. Your mission would be to guide the Shadowmere through the Epsilon Eridani system using your unconventional navigation approach. If successful, you would gather intelligence on hegemony fleet strength and shipyard capabilities. And, if unsuccessful? Then, you become another wreck in the neutron star's gravitational field, Admiral Korath said matter-of-factly. But, your sacrifice would provide valuable data on the failure of your theoretical approach. Marcus stared at the holographic ship, his mind racing. 3 days ago, his biggest worry had been understanding alien bathroom etiquette. Now military leaders were asking him to risk his life testing a theory he'd come up with in a physics class. Can I think about it? Of course. But, do not think too long, Student Chen. Our intelligence suggests the hegemony will move within the next few planetary cycles. If they launch their warfleet before we understand their capabilities, the casualties could number in the billions. Marcus nodded and made his way back to his dormitory, his head spinning with the implications of what he'd been asked to do. As he walked through the station's corridors, he noticed other students watching him with new interest. Word had apparently spread about the human who'd impressed the Strategic Council. Marcus. ZYXTAL approached, his compound eyes reflecting the corridor's bioluminescent lighting. I heard about your presentation to the Military Council. Most impressive for a primitive species. Thanks, I think. I have been researching your planet's history, the Vorthan continued. Your species has a fascinating relationship with warfare. Most civilizations evolve past large-scale conflict once they achieve interstellar capability. Not humans, Marcus agreed. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We're really good at it. Indeed. I found records of something called World War II in your planetary database. 60 million casualties over 6 of your years. The strategic complexity was remarkable: multiple theaters of conflict, advanced technology, psychological warfare, economic manipulation. Marcus stopped walking. You studied World War II? And many others. The American Civil War, the Punic Wars, the conflicts in Afghanistan, the Korean Peninsula engagement. Your species appears to have refined warfare into an art form. Most people don't think of war as art. Perhaps because most beings have never needed to become truly proficient at it. ZYXDAL's head tilted in what Marcus was learning to recognize as the Vorthan equivalent of a thoughtful expression. Your species has faced existential threats regularly throughout your evolution. You have learned to innovate under pressure, to find victory in impossible situations, to turn disadvantages into advantages. They reached Marcus's dormitory, but ZYXDAL continued talking. I have a theory about why the exchange program selected you specifically, the alien said. Your academic scores were indeed mediocre by galactic standards. But your psychological profile showed something interesting: unusually high scores for creative problem solving under stress, adaptive thinking, and what your species calls lateral thinking. Meaning? Meaning they did not select you despite your average intelligence, Marcus Chen. They selected you because of your particularly human intelligence. That night, Marcus lay in his bed staring out at the stars, thinking about ZYXDAL's words. The Vorthan was right about one thing: humans had spent millennia getting really good at war. Not because they wanted to, but because the alternative was extinction. His communication pad chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as Captain Z. Voss, GSV Shadowmere. Student Chen, I understand Admiral Korath has made you an unusual offer. I wanted to speak with you before you make your decision. My crew and I have been studying your gravitational choreography concept. It's brilliant, but it's also insane. Using time dilation as a tactical multiplier requires split-second timing, perfect navigation, and the kind of situational adaptability that most species lost millions of years ago. Are you prepared to bet your life that humans still have what it takes? Because that's what you'll be doing. Captain Voss. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Then, he activated his reply function and began to type, Captain Voss, I've been thinking about something my grandfather used to say. He was a Marine in one of Earth's wars, and he told me that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. The right thing here is to stop a war that could kill billions of people. If there's a chance that human thinking can help, then I have to try. When do we leave? Marcus. The reply came back within minutes. Tomorrow, 0600 hours. Welcome to the crew, Marcus. Try to get some sleep, it might be the last good night's rest you get for a while. Marcus closed his eyes, but sleep was impossible. In less than 6 hours, he would be leaving the relative safety of Kepler Station to test a theory that could either revolutionize galactic warfare or get him killed in the most spectacular way possible. But, as he lay there in the darkness, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since arriving at the station: purpose. He wasn't just a random human who'd gotten lucky with an exchange program. He was representing something important: the idea that sometimes, when all the careful planning and sophisticated analysis failed, you needed someone crazy enough to try a different approach. The galaxy was about to discover what humans meant when they said, "Hold my beer." The Shadowmere was unlike any ship Marcus had ever imagined. From the outside, it looked like a piece of space itself, surfaces that bent light around them, creating an almost invisible profile against the starfield. Inside, the corridors hummed with barely contained energy, and Marcus could feel the ship's consciousness probing at the edges of his thoughts. She's a living ship, Captain Zara Voss explained as she led Marcus through the bridge. Symbiotic biotechnology fused with quantum processing systems. The Shadowmere doesn't just follow our commands, she anticipates them. Captain Voss was human, Marcus realized with surprise. She looked to be in her 40s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of scars that came from fighting in places where medical technology wasn't available. "You're from Earth?" Marcus asked. "Mars colony, actually. Been in space for 23 years. She gestured around the bridge, where beings from multiple species worked at stations that seemed to grow from the ship's living hull. "I'm part of the collective's Deep Space Corps, humans who've integrated into galactic society. There are more of us than you might think." "How many?" "Couple thousand spread across the galaxy. Most of us ended up in military or exploration roles." Voss grinned. "Turns out other species find humans useful for jobs that require creative problem-solving in dangerous situations." She introduced Marcus to the rest of the crew: Kathare, a Selenite whose gossamer wings could detect gravitational fluctuations; Diaromar, a Goliath whose massive frame housed sensor arrays capable of analyzing quantum-level space distortions; and Zip, a skitterer whose ability to process multiple data streams simultaneously made him the ship's communications officer. "The plan is simple," Voss continued as they gathered around the central holographic display. "We enter the Epsilon Eridani system using your gravitational choreography approach. Instead of trying to maintain fleet cohesion, we'll deliberately use the time dilation effects to create multiple observation windows." The display showed their route, a complex path that would take them through several different gravitational zones around the neutron star. "First pass takes us through the moderate compression zone," Marcus explained, highlighting the route. "We gather initial reconnaissance data, then use the gravitational slingshot to boost our speed for the second pass." "The second pass goes through severe time dilation," Voss added. "From our perspective, we'll spend hours observing the shipyards. But, from the perspective of anyone tracking us, we'll appear to vanish for only minutes." "And the third pass?" Diaromar asked, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "That's where things get interesting," Marcus said. "We use the time acceleration zone to essentially fast-forward through our exit route. If anyone tries to pursue us, they'll be stuck in normal spacetime while we're already 3 hours ahead of them." Kathare's wings shimmered with concern. "This plan requires precision navigation to within microseconds. One miscalculation and we could emerge from time dilation decades after we entered. Or we could be crushed by tidal forces," Zip added cheerfully, his tiny voice chirping from multiple speakers around the bridge. "But the probability analysis is fascinating. I calculate a 67% chance of mission success, 31% chance of catastrophic failure, and 2% chance of accidentally discovering something that revolutionizes physics." "Those odds are better than I expected," Voss said. "Marcus, are you ready for this?" Marcus looked around the bridge at the faces watching him, some familiar, some utterly alien, but all showing the same expression of determined confidence. These beings were trusting him with their lives based on a theory he'd developed in a classroom. "As ready as I'll ever be." The journey to Epsilon Eridani took 18 hours at faster-than-light speeds. Marcus spent the time studying everything the collective knew about the hegemony. What he learned made his blood run cold. The hegemony wasn't just another aggressive species. They were the remnants of an ancient empire that had once conquered most of the galaxy before mysteriously withdrawing to a handful of heavily fortified systems. For millions of years, they had remained isolated, building up their strength and nursing their grievances against the species that had dared to exist in their absence. Recent intelligence suggested they were finally ready to emerge. Their technology had advanced far beyond anything the collective possessed. Their ships were larger, faster, and more heavily armed. Their soldiers were genetically enhanced warriors bred specifically for conquest. Most terrifying of all, their society had spent millions of years focused on a single goal: reclaiming what they believed was rightfully theirs. "The galaxy," Marcus said, reading through the intelligence reports. "All of it," Voss confirmed. "Every inhabited system, every species, every world. They consider us temporary occupants of their property." "How did they conquer the galaxy the first time?" "Superior technology, overwhelming force, and absolute ruthlessness," Diaromar answered. "They would arrive at a system, offer one chance for surrender, then exterminate every living thing if refused." "Most species surrendered. What made them withdraw?" "Nobody knows. One day they were conquering everything in sight, the next they were pulling back to their core territories. The only survivors from that era were species that hadn't achieved spaceflight yet. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Like humans. Exactly like humans. Which is probably why the collective is so interested in your species' perspective. You're the only spacefaring civilization that developed without any knowledge of the hegemony threat. Your entire approach to conflict evolved independently. The Shadowmere's consciousness touched Marcus's mind gently, sharing sensor data that indicated they were approaching the Epsilon Eridani system. Through the ship's extended senses, Marcus could feel the neutron star's immense gravitational field pulling at the fabric of spacetime around them. Beginning approach, Voss announced. Marcus, you're our navigator from here on out. Marcus moved to the navigation console, feeling the ship's living interface respond to his touch. The holographic display showed their current position and the complex maze of gravitational effects they would need to thread through. Adjusting course to intercept the first-time compression zone, Marcus said, his hands moving across the controls. Cathare, I need continuous gravitational readings. Any fluctuation could throw off our timing. Understood. Gravitational flux is unusual. The neutron star's rotation is creating interference patterns I have never seen before. That's why nobody's successfully navigated this system, Voss said. The gravitational field isn't just strong, it's chaotic. Actually, Marcus said, studying the readings, I think that's what makes this work. The chaos means there's no predictable pattern for enemies to track. We're not just using the time dilation effects, we're hiding in the gravitational noise. The ship shuddered as they entered the first compression zone. Marcus felt time itself stretching around them, the universe outside slowing to a crawl while they maintained normal temporal flow within the ship's protective field. First observation window in 3, 2, 1. The holographic display exploded with data as their sensors locked onto the hegemony shipyards. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. The shipyards weren't just facilities, they were a structure that dwarfed entire moons. Massive construction frameworks stretched across hundreds of kilometers, each one containing ships that were more like mobile battle stations. The vessels were sleek and deadly, covered in weapon systems that Marcus couldn't begin to identify. How many ships? Voss asked quietly. Zip's rapid calculations filled the air with chirping sounds. Initial count suggests 12,000 combat vessels in various stages of completion. Analysis of energy signatures indicates weapons capable of sterilizing planetary surfaces from interstellar distances. 12,000? Marcus stared at the display. How is that possible? They have had millions of years to prepare, Dr. Omar said grimly. And access to resources from multiple star systems. Exiting compression zone in 10 seconds, Cathare announced. Preparing for gravitational slingshot maneuver. The ship lurched as they were caught by the neutron star's gravity well, accelerating them toward the second observation point. This time, they would pass much closer to the shipyards, risking detection but gaining detailed intelligence on hegemony capabilities. Entering severe time dilation in 5, 4, 3. The universe outside froze. From their perspective, the hegemony ships hung motionless in space while they spent subjective hours studying every detail of their construction and armaments. Energy shielding is unlike anything in our databases, Zip reported. Power source appears to be controlled singularities, they are using miniature black holes to power their ships. Weapon systems are equally advanced, Dr. Omar added. I am detecting gravitic cannons, quantum disruptors, and something that appears to bend spacetime itself into a weapon. Marcus felt his heart sinking as the full scope of the hegemony's military might become clear. The collective's forces would be like Stone Age warriors facing modern tanks. There has to be something, he muttered, studying the ship designs. Some weakness, some vulnerability. Marcus, Voss said gently, sometimes the intelligence you gather isn't what you hoped for. Sometimes you learn that the enemy is too strong to defeat conventionally. No. Marcus shook his head. There's always something. Every system has flaws, every plan has weaknesses. We just have to think differently. He studied the ship formations, looking for patterns. The hegemony vessels were arranged in perfect geometric formations, each ship positioned precisely relative to its neighbors. Their energy signatures showed coordinated power distribution, synchronized shield harmonics, linked tactical networks. "They're networked," Marcus said suddenly. "All their ships are connected to a central command system." "Standard military doctrine for most advanced civilizations," Cathare observed. "It allows for perfect coordination and eliminates communication delays. But it also creates a single point of failure." Marcus began highlighting connections in the tactical display. "Look at this. Every ship is dependent on the command network for targeting data, shield coordination, and tactical updates." "You are suggesting that disrupting their command structure would cripple their fleet?" Dr. Omar asked. "I'm suggesting something more than that." Marcus's mind was racing now, connections forming as he applied human military thinking to an alien problem. "What if we don't try to fight their ships at all? What if we fight their network?" "Explain," Voss said. "The hegemony has spent millions of years perfecting their technology. Their ships are probably invulnerable to conventional weapons. But their greatest strength, perfect coordination, is also their greatest weakness. They've become dependent on their network." Marcus began manipulating the holographic display, showing theoretical attack vectors that ignored the ships entirely. "We don't attack their hulls. We attack their ability to communicate, to coordinate, to function as a unified force. We turn their perfect formation into chaos." "Fascinating," Zip chirped. "But how would you disrupt a network that's sophisticated?" "The same way we're navigating this gravitational field," Marcus grinned. "We use their strength against them. Their command signals have to travel through spacetime just like everything else. What if we could create localized time dilation effects that desynchronize their network?" The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. "You want to weaponize time itself," Voss said slowly. "Not weaponize. Choreograph. Just like we're doing now, use gravitational effects to create temporal chaos in their formation. Their ships would receive commands at different times, their shields would fall out of sync, their targeting systems would be calculating based on outdated position data. And, while they are struggling to re-establish coordination," Dr. Omar added, understanding dawning in his massive form, conventional forces could exploit the confusion. "Exactly. Turn their perfect formation into 12,000 individual ships fighting separate battles instead of one coordinated war machine." "Exiting time dilation in 30 seconds, Cathare announced. Preparing for final observation pass." As they completed their reconnaissance mission and began the complex journey back through the gravitational maze, Marcus felt something he hadn't expected: hope. The hegemony was incredibly powerful, but they were also incredibly dependent on their technological superiority. And humans had thousands of years of experience dealing with technologically superior enemies. "Captain," Marcus said as they cleared the neutron star's gravity well and prepared for their jump back to collective space, "I need to speak to Admiral Korath as soon as we reach Kepler Station." "Why?" "Because I think I know how to win a war that everybody else thinks is unwinnable." The journey back seemed to take forever, but, finally, the crystalline spires of Kepler Station appeared on their sensors. As they docked, Marcus realized that his life as a simple exchange student was over. He had become something else, a bridge between human military thinking and galactic strategic doctrine, a specialist in the kind of desperate tactics that could turn hopeless situations into victories. Admiral Korath was waiting for them in the docking bay, along with the entire Strategic Council. "Student Chen," the massive Titani said, "your mission was successful?" "More than successful, sir. We have intelligence on hegemony capabilities and a theoretical approach to countering their advantages." "Theoretical approach?" Marcus looked around at the assembled military leaders, beings who had studied warfare for centuries, who commanded fleets spanning multiple star systems, who had forgotten more about tactics than humans had ever learned. "Admiral, has anyone ever asked humans to help plan a galactic war?" "No, Student Chen." "Why do you ask?" Marcus smiled, feeling the weight of Earth's military history behind him, thousands of years of humans who had faced impossible odds and found ways to win anyway. Because you're about to learn why my species never evolved past large-scale warfare. We never needed to. We just got really, really good at it. The Strategic Council listened in stunned silence as Marcus outlined his plan for defeating the most powerful military force in galactic history. And, for the first time in millions of years, beings who had conquered fear began to feel something they had almost forgotten: hope. The exchange student was about to become the galaxy's most unlikely super soldier, not because he was stronger or faster or smarter than anyone else, but because he was human. And humans had never met a hopeless situation they wouldn't try to solve by hitting it from an angle nobody else had thought of. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth's first interstellar student had been chosen for something much more important than classroom learning. Marcus Chen wasn't just studying at Kepler Station. He was preparing to save everyone.